Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants. Today, I have a very special guest. I have an immigration attorney, Erika, and she's going to be talking about her experience growing up with an immigrant mom, and then also her experience becoming an immigration attorney and the work that she does. Welcome, Erika, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heidi. So I know that you've got some questions for me, so I'll just let you start with those.
Yeah, so let's just get right on into just growing up. Like, how was it for you? Just growing up. I know you had previously mentioned that, your mom had came from Mexico, you were born here, and your dad was also born here, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so just let us know just how it was growing up for Erika.
So I grew up in a migrant farm working family, and this is the type of work that my parents did because on my father's side, this is sort of the type of work they've done for probably 2 or 3 generations. And so just naturally he fell into just the farm working and started really at about 6 years old, going and helping his family. He comes from a very large family, one of 9 kids. And surprisingly, my mom is also one of 9 children. So for my father, it is a little bit different. He was born here along with the rest of his siblings. He is, if I'm not mistaken, a fourth generation. And when it comes to my mother, she came when she was 9 years old. Her and her entire family, so all of her siblings and her parents, they came in when she was 9, and she is the baby girl. So she was one of the youngest. And they all came during a time when it was much, much easier to come to the United States with a work visa. And so they did, they applied for everything. They did the legal process, right? And they came in. And so eventually they did file for via amnesty. And so they were able to, my grandfather just, hired an attorney that helped everyone with the process. And that's how they stayed here permanently after that. But that is sort of the beginning, right, of how my mom got here to the United States. And then I know she's just talked to me a little bit about, growing up here. And so with me growing up with her coming here, and even though she was 9, I feel that she still kept or held on to a lot of her roots and what she learned from home, because my grandmother just really just she continued to teach them about their traditions, their cultures at home. And I feel that all of, my tias and my mom, they really held on to those things. And so growing up, my mom in the household, my mom would speak to me in Spanish and I would respond in English. So that was one of the neat things that I never really noticed it until I had friends around, and they were like, your mom just spoke to you in another language and you responded in English. Like, why do you do that? And I'm like, oh, yeah. But my mom, her first language has always been Spanish. And so that was just one of the things that I noticed was sort of different between me and my mom and my friends' parents.
Yeah, for sure. And so how did you feel about like not noticing that you were speaking, like you speak Spanish now, right? But you can understand it and everything. So you speak Spanish fluently now?
I do. I speak Spanish every day, all day. I will be honest, it was so, I say it was just a blessing from the Lord, because I had trouble speaking Spanish growing up. So my friends, even if they were Spanish speakers, they would speak to me in Spanish, and a lot of times I would just respond in English. And so they understood me. They understood what I was saying because they were bilingual. And so when I started the firm, this was when I started Honest Immigration in 2015. I remember I spent, gosh, probably about 6 months to a year preparing. And I made sure that I had everything on the list. I was like, okay, what are my basics? What do I need? So I did everything. And then the one thing that I thought of probably the night before I opened up, this was, I opened up on a Monday. And so that Sunday night, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, when I talk to my friends, my Latina friends, I'm always asking, ¿y cómo se dice? ¿Y cómo se dice? And I thought, how am I going to do it when I open up tomorrow and I have clients and I don't know how to say something? And I remember just starting to pray and thinking, Lord, help me tomorrow. And let me just tell you, by the grace of God, I remember getting the first phone call and just the Spanish just flowing so easily. And I thought, thank you, Jesus. But that is one of the things that was just so interesting just to watch. And I'll just never forget that because it was just such a special just experience.
Yeah, I mean, it can be hard for us when we are bilingual and it's like you think in one language and then you speak in another and things. And then sometimes you forget words in both languages and you're like, okay, like I don't even know what I'm talking anymore. So I definitely understand that. And I'm glad that you're able to help, the Hispanic community because it is very important to have an attorney that can speak your own language, you feel more comfortable and you feel, at home, like, okay, someone understands me instead of having to like translate and things get lost in that translation.
No, I said, I completely agree. That is exactly why I said, no, I can't just have some sort of translator. I want to be able to speak
Yeah.
to my in their language. And, I should have been learning along the way and I was just lazy, but I wanted to speak to them in Spanish because I didn't want to have an interpreter.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask because you said your dad was born here, your mom came from Mexico. Was there any like cultural not I want to say clashes, but kind of like just like did you see any adaptations that they had to do, like your dad with your mom's culture or vice versa, your mom with your dad's culture?
I didn't notice it then. I feel like I noticed it more growing up and becoming an adult and then starting my own
Mm.
family. That's when I sort of noticed some of the things. I will say because my dad was fourth generation here, for him it was very easy to have more of the my mother also working. Now I will say they both
Oh,
work together, and so that was something that growing up I thought, even as an adult, a lot of the Latino friends that I had, it was, if they got married, they were sort of the ones that were going to be the ones at home, and the husband was going to be the one to work, and they were sort of
yeah.
a single income family household, and that, like I said, I really didn't notice until I was an adult, and I thought, my mom's always worked, and even with some of my aunts, that was sort of what they would do is, more of stay home, and then but my father did. He was sort of more Americanized in that way of being okay with we're both going to work together, we're going to have this income, make the a double income, and be able to support the family together. So again, I didn't really notice it as a child. More so as an adult is when I really
As an
started to
adult.
notice that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a big in the Hispanic for community for the woman to stay home with the kids and things like that. And then the man be the primary, breadwinner and provider and stuff. So that's awesome that they were able to work together and work and provide for the family. You had told me before that you were able to visit Mexico. I want to hear about the very first time you were able to go. How was that experience? Did you experience any culture shocks? How was that?
Okay, so this is going to sound crazy, but my parents had always said, I'm the oldest of five siblings, and they'd always said, oh, we're going to go, we're going to take you to Mexico one day. The thing is, because my father is fourth generation, he doesn't have anyone in Mexico to go visit. There is no extended family over there. So we just didn't have anybody on his side. My mother's side, because she came so young, and her parents both were only children of their parents, it was also very limited as far as who there was to visit. If anything, it was sort of some really extended family that honestly, because she left so young from Mexico, she really didn't establish those relationships with those family members.
Yeah.
So we really didn't have anyone to just, say, oh, we're going to go visit, tia so and
Yeah.
so, or the abuela, or, the grandparents were here in the United States and everything. So I didn't go to Mexico until I was in college. So I was already, I think I was like 19 years old, if I remember correctly. And I went with one of my best friends at the time. And so I went with her and her family. And we went
Oh,
to a small town in Guanajuato. And I hope I'm remembering correctly. I believe it was Guanimaro. And so we went there, and I just remember when we got there, it was I I think it was more so about the land there. It's just like we
yeah.
were in just hills and everywhere around us, the mountains, and it was very shocking to me because there was this rancho, and everywhere you looked, I felt like it was in a fishbowl. And so, more than anything, it wasn't so much the culture because I grew up with an abuela that that just cook all the traditional Mexican dishes. So I was used to the food. I was used to some of the traditions, that we participated in, whether with the family or with church. It was more so just Mexico. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I remember the first day I was a little bit thinking like, oh my goodness, am I going to have to cut this trip early and just, go back home? But no, it was after that, I was fine. I think it was more so just feeling like I was in a fishbowl, but because of the landscape more than anything, not
Yeah.
because in particular. So, but it was wonderful. It was great. And I've been back since quite a few times, mainly just to family vacations, but I've enjoyed it every time I've been.
How long did you guys stay when you guys first went?
So that time with my friend, I stayed, it was about a week and a half with the travel days.
Nice.
Since then, the times that I've gone typically for vacations, it's also been 7 to 9 days, as well, including the travel days. But again, like I mentioned, I just have been to different places and really enjoyed just Mexico in general. It's so large and there's so much to do. And it's like, wow, I feel like I could just constantly go visit there. And there's always something new to see, do.
Yeah, for sure. I love hearing the first experience of when, immigrants go back to their home country and then like they stay for like a month or a month and a half, because usually it takes them so long to be able to visit back after they move. And so like, there's like, well, okay, you have to go for like a long extended period of time to like be able to enjoy everything and things like that. So I love that you've been able to go and visit Mexico. And have you been able to take your family?
I have, yes. So the other vacations have been family vacations. And so we've taken, I've gone with, my spouse and our child. And so we've really enjoyed the times that we've gone with them. And as a family, we travel all around the world and we travel often. And so I feel that it wasn't as big of a culture shock for my child just because he's just been exposed to so much that everything is just fun and new and exciting. So it's not it's not scary or, it's not shocking or anything like that. I really just love to see the experiences through his eyes as well.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And so let's switch gears a little bit to your career. So you're an immigration attorney, and I just want to know, like, when did you know that you wanted to be an attorney and specifically an immigration attorney? Because I know, like, when you go to law school, you're exposed to like so many different areas of the law. So, like, when did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
So believe it or not, I wanted to be an attorney since I was in elementary school. And I also knew that I wanted to help the immigrant community again, very, very early on in my life, because growing up in a farm working family, a migrant farm working family, we used to travel to a different city every 4 to 6 months. And so I was always a new girl. I was always meeting new people, but there were some families that traveled with us. And so we'd all travel at the same time to the different city, just chasing the crops, really. And so I, just got used to these families. And I would remember when my father would just, sometimes come in and just very stressed out and, oh, so and so, of course I was a kid, so I really didn't know all the details. But I remember hearing the conversation between him and my mother, and my father just letting her know, like, oh, so and so se lo llevó la migra, and they showed up unexpectedly, and he was taken, and the family, the wife, and many times the wife was not working, so she was at home with the children. So now they had their only source of income, which would have been, her husband, now
Oh,
deported.
man.
And so, a lot of times we would maybe take them food or just, see if there was anything that they needed. And it was just such a time of just watching even my father and just even the community around us that we knew, just the other families, just how stressed everyone was. And I remember finally when I got old enough, just finding out that this happened just because maybe he was driving without a license. So it wasn't that he had done anything really, in my eyes. As a child, I always thought something really serious was when somebody, maybe stole, or they, they were trying to commit murder. You think of just sometimes the worst case scenarios, and you think, oh, what did this person do to make them, get caught and then be deported? And as I got older and started to ask some of these questions, and just finding out, oh, it's because he was driving without a license, or, it's just, oh, it's because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and immigration showed up and he was undocumented. So they just detained him and they deported him. And I remember thinking, wow, so I'd already seen the negative effects of what that deportation had on the rest of the family. And I remember thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I want to be able to help these people someday. And honestly, I didn't know how. So as I grew older and in school is when I realized that, oh, I want to be an attorney. And there's actually a way that attorneys can help undocumented immigrants living in the United States, And so that was sort of where this passion grew. But I've wanted to do it since I was really young. And one of the things that really is a memory of mine that really shifted things for me and made me say, you know what, I'm going to stick to this and I'm going to do this. I'm going to become an attorney and I'm going to be specifically an immigration attorney to help undocumented immigrants in the United States was when I was 16 years old. I remember I hadn't had my license that long. I was already in bed. I was sleeping and my father comes in late and wakes me up.
Hi, Heidi here. Thank you so much for listening and supporting my podcast, but most importantly, the mission. If you would like to further support this podcast, there are a few ways you can do that. You can sign up for the newsletter. You'll receive the episodes straight to your inbox every time they drop. The link is in the show notes and the show description. You can subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel. And lastly, you can donate money. That link is also in the show notes and show description. If you would like to sponsor an episode or promote your business on this show, send me an email at Heidi@HeidyDelacruz.com. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the episode.
He wakes me up and he says, hurry up, get dressed. We've got to go. I need you to drive. So I didn't ask too many questions. I wake up, it's the middle of the night. I'm like, just thinking, okay, that had never happened before. So I knew something was wrong. And so I get up, I quickly, throw on some clothes and I, get ready. And so we're out the door. And it wasn't until we were in our vehicle, we're driving, and I'm, start asking him, because I've always been very, very curious, and start asking my dad. I'm like, well, where are we going? What's going on? So just to summarize sort of what had happened that night is my father's, one of his coworkers, that was undocumented, was driving, from the packing shed. A lot of those clothes, they work through the night sometimes in those packing sheds. He was driving from a packing shed, going home. It was super late. And he was driving his van home and he got pulled over by the police officer. I honestly can't remember why he got pulled over. It could have been that maybe he didn't have the blinker on or something, but he got pulled over. Well, the police officer, by the grace of God, knew my father. So he called my father and he said, hey, Eddie, he said, I've got this gentleman here. And so if you can come, he says he knows you and that he works with you. So if you can come and you can pick him up, what I'll do is I'll let you take his van, because if you don't come pick him up, I'm going to have to arrest him. There'll probably be, immigration will probably go ahead and put a hold on him. I'm going to have to have his van towed. So my father was like, I'll be right there. So what we did is we drove to the scene, and then as soon as we got there, my father got off. He quickly, was speaking to the police officer, who very graciously, let my dad know about this. So they spoke for a little bit, and then my dad came back and he said, okay, go ahead and go on home. So I, of course, drove home, and my dad took the van and took his buddy, took him home. And I just thought, why? This is just insane. And so that was such a turning point for me. And I just said, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to become an attorney one day, and I'm going to help individuals like this man, because there is no reason why a situation like this, I'm thinking, why can't he just get a ticket like the rest of us, and be on his way? But it just had to be such in my opinion, such an exaggerated and drastic consequence for such a small infraction. And so that is sort of what really changed things for me in my mind.
Oh man, well, God bless your heart. And I'm glad that you follow through with that passion to be able to help our community and be able to help people stay in this country. People come for a better opportunity. And so being able to help them to stay. And like you said, a lot of them are, the breadwinner in the house. So it's like, if they leave, it's like, what happens to the family, and so a lot of things like that people don't talk about. So I'm glad you went through the whole process of becoming an attorney. And so you started your own law firm in 2015, correct, you said?
I did, yes. In 2015, I started my own law firm, and I was working, doing just immigration, but I did more of a variety of cases. everything within the family law area. So, just different, I won't bore you with all the different cases, but just a variety of different cases. And I really felt then a few years later, the Lord really leading me down a path that I had a passion for, and it just kept growing and growing, which was to really focus on the victim visas, which are your VAWA, your T visa, your U visa. So I started focusing on those, and this was I'm trying to think, it was January of 2020. And so, as I feel like when you finally make a decision, I feel like it becomes very difficult in the beginning. And so this was sort of my case. I started just taking those cases January of 2020 and stopped taking any other type of case. And this is where I feel like it was most difficult, because then it was like all these other case types, they were trying to hire us for these other cases, and we had to keep turning people away and saying, no, we're just focusing on these types of cases. So it was very difficult, but I knew that this was what the Lord had for me is to focus in this area. And I remember thinking, God, like, you're going to have to show me that this is the right path, because I feel that I'm going to go broke. I'm turning people away, people that need my help, and I'm turning them away because I feel that you have me on this path to focus on helping, people that are, victims of domestic violence and, victims of human trafficking. And I will tell you, when the pandemic started, so it started about in March, by April, we started getting so many phone calls and so many clients. That year, our business quintupled in size. It just grew so quickly. And we had, more work, I'll be honest, than we could handle just with those types of cases. And so I really then saw like the word of the Lord working in all of that, and thought, okay, Lord, like, this is definitely a confirmation that I'm on the path that you've set me on. And so it has not been an easy one, but it has been a very rewarding one, specifically because of the types of individuals that we help.
Yeah, so there's so many different layers to the immigration process and so many different fields that people can work in. And so if you could just provide a little bit of education as to like the cases that you take and the type of visas, just to provide that education for the audience.
So now we only focus on two case types, which are the VAWA and the T visa. So the T visa is the one for victims of human trafficking. And so the three requirements, there's three simple requirements for this visa. And I always say they're sort of the basic, right? Because the law is very extensive, but there's three sort of basic requirements. And that's, you have to have been forced to work here in the United States under some sort of threat or intimidation or fear. And the third one would be that you cannot have left the United States after this situation happened to you. So that's sort of the T visa in a nutshell. A lot of people qualify for it, and they don't realize it because they get caught up with all of the details. I think one of the things to begin with is that they've been to so many attorneys, and no attorney has told them before about this visa. One of the things I've realized is focusing in this area is that there are not many attorneys that focus with these on these victim visas. And so that's sort of one of the reasons why people are very hesitant, and I want to say almost not trusting whenever we explain to them these opportunities. The other reason is because they start to get, what I would say, bogged down in the details. They think, oh yeah, but this happened to me years ago. I can't possibly qualify because it happened, 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. There's nothing in the law that says that it had to have happened recently, and they get bogged down in other details. Like they think, oh, but I don't have any proof. Well, nobody said you had to have, proof or evidence of the situation. And so things like this, where a lot of people they themselves believe that they don't qualify, when in reality they do. And there's so many people that qualify with that visa in particular. Now, the other one that we focus on sort of has two parts. It's for individuals so it can be for parents who have suffered some sort of mistreatment from their son or daughter who is a U.S. citizen and is also an adult. So that's one part of the VAWA. The other part of VAWA is it's for individuals who have suffered mistreatment by a spouse who is a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident. And so there's a little bit more to those, but that is in a nutshell sort of what VAWA is. And again, a lot of people, for whatever reason, sometimes maybe they're, let's just say the VAWA for spouse. There may be a spouse who is already helping them with an immigration process, which a lot of people know is a family petition, and which is your form I-130. And so they think that maybe just because they're already doing that, that they can't do VAWA. Well, again, nobody told them that, like, they can do two processes at one time if they qualify. And so I just feel more than anything, a lot of times it's the individuals that are just thinking too much about details that are not part of the law, or they're not facts. There's so much misinformation out there as well that confuses people.
Yes.
And so they then just take it, run with it, and miss a great opportunity, in my opinion.
Okay, well, thank you so much for explaining that. I actually learned a lot. And this is why I truly enjoy speaking with immigration attorneys, because each time I do, I just learn something new, because I know it's so complex, the immigration process. There's so many pathways and so many things that people can qualify for that they aren't aware that they qualify for, in like different ways that they are able to stay here in the United States legally. What would you say is the most challenging part about your job?
I would say the most challenging part would be gaining people's trust, and I get it. There are so many scams out there. There's so much misinformation. I'll be honest, there's even other attorneys that are giving wrong information. And so, now this isn't everyone. I'm not saying that there's, people intentionally doing this, but I think sometimes if maybe there's somebody that doesn't specialize or focus in this area, it's very easy to just try to answer a question without really taking the time to research it and learn more about it. And so then it becomes more difficult for us to be able to help individuals and help them more so to understand what is expected or what's required more so to be able to qualify for these visas in particular. Another thing that I guess with the trust that comes hand in hand is the fact that we as a law firm work with our clients at a distance. So our clients, the majority of them, never see us in person. Everything is done via technology. And so this is a great benefit, because it saves them a lot of time. They don't have to take off of work. They don't have to risk themselves driving undocumented or unlicensed, to where we are. None of that is necessary. We can work with them as long as they're living within the United States. We work with them at a distance. And so that in itself is sort of a new normal. And that's something that, I will say, I don't feel like every law firm has decided to go that route. So whenever somebody finds out that we work that way, we work at a distance or we work remotely, that is also sort of difficult for them to understand. They're thinking, how in the world are we going to do this at a distance with you never going to your office? But we help, so many clients, and we're so blessed and thankful for that. But yeah, overall, I would say the trust in getting them to understand that these visas are legit, and then getting them to understand that the way that we work with them and that we are an actual real law firm, just because we work with them remotely doesn't make us any different than any other traditional law firm.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know. Definitely, to provide this information to the audience. And then also, obviously, I'll be sharing on social media. So if there's anyone that may qualify or think that they qualify, we'll definitely include, your contact information so they can get in contact with you. But I really want to just wrap it up with you sharing, a reward or an advice or anything good about, what you do and things like that. So kind of like, a word of encouragement or, what's rewarding, something uplifting.
Oh my gosh, every day. We get approvals, I will say, several times a week. And this is something that I just thank the Lord for every time. Because there are days, like you're saying, to say something uplifting, because there are a lot of times, as you well know, I'm sure, is when you're working and you're working at anything, it can get difficult, it can get tough. And it's very easy to think, you know what, this could just stop if I threw in the towel,
Yeah.
But
yes.
when we're those approvals, weekly, it is such a blessing, and it is such a reminder for me from the Lord that this is something that I should keep doing, that I should keep working at. No matter how hard it gets, the Lord always sees me through. And so, with every time that we get one of those approvals, I know that I am not just helping that client, I'm helping their entire family unit, and I'm helping even people around them who maybe are watching them. Because a lot of times I'll have clients that'll say, I've already told my friends, my family, everybody knows I'm in this process. And everybody's, sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes the clients will say, and everyone's telling me, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They're just going to take your money. They're just going to steal from you.
Mm,
So I have a client here who is, very down and feeling, hopeful, but at the same time, not really having that support. So whenever we get that approval for them, they are just ecstatic. They're just like, oh,
yeah.
thank God. Thank you so much, abogada. Gracias. It's, now I can go tell my family. And we've had those clients that will then, they'll typically will have them do interviews with us, their testimonials. And during that, they're like, yeah, they didn't believe me. And now, now I've got some friends excited. They're going to be calling you. And now they see that there's a
Yep.
way. So encouragement that happens, that spreads, and the hope that spreads from receiving, from somebody in that community receiving an approval. And I know also for generations to come, now that family is going to be so much different for generations to come. It doesn't just stop with that one individual or that one client. And so that is what I'm most grateful for. And I know that that is something that'll live long, long into the future, well after I'm gone. This will be something still reaping rewards. And I am just so excited, to see that. And see, as much as I can of it. And so I really enjoyed that. And I really continue to believe in that. And that more than anything is what really keeps me going.
Amen. That is so beautiful. And I didn't even think about that. Like how you mentioned, like this doesn't just benefit them now, it benefits generation in the future. And it's absolutely true. So I do want to say thank you again for coming, sharing your experience. God bless your heart. God bless your work. Thank you so much for, following that passion and staying true to it and helping the community. How can people get in contact with you if they feel like how can they get in contact with you if they need help in this area?
Yes, and so that's a question we do get a lot is how do we know, how can you help me, right? They hear me talk about
Hmm.
all of these tools that we get and we help a lot of people. The fastest way to get in contact with us is to schedule an evaluation. And that can be done very easily, very quickly via our website, which is www.honestimmigration.com. And so once somebody goes on there, on the first page, they're going to get all the information about what we do. Everything is in Spanish already because a huge part of our client base is Latinos, which is, where my passion, where my heart is. And so we have all that information there. And we have that link also to be able to schedule that evaluation, to be able to speak to someone on our team and just get started with the very first step of finding out, can we help you? Because it is such an honor and a privilege to be able to help individuals in the Latino community.
Awesome, perfect. I will definitely include the link to your website in the show notes and in the show descriptions. And thank you, Erica, so much again for this, for providing all that information, for helping the community, and for coming on here to just to share your story, share your journey, and all this information. So, thank you so 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 much.
No, thank you so much, Heidi. It was a great honor and a privilege to have to be able to be on your podcast. So thank you.